Good morning. In this video, I'm going to be talking about time, going to be talking about quantum superposition, I'm going to be talking about multiverses, black holes, and I'm sure it'll dip into a few more things and topics. I know the multiverse theory and the quantum superposition theory and studies, it's not something that's very popular. It's not a study or theory that's, I'd say mainstream. It's taking off as far as people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Russell Brand and Elon Musk and people like this. They're starting to review not only quantum physics more in depth, but they're also starting to look at simulation theory. And what we can find and connect with the two is they are both kind of correct. They're both, I feel, in relation to each other. So I'm going to be talking about time. I had a video I put out maybe 2 weeks ago talking about time. And there was something in that video I said where I said that I couldn't figure it out in my head how all is now, everything is happening now, there is no past or no future, so I couldn't figure out in my head how are some people dead in my reality and my perception, how are people physically dead, yet all is now, so they never fully died, they're still alive and they're still here and they're still happening. I couldn't work this out in my head because I was using this as a reference of time, which is what I was thinking. You know, time could be as or function as maybe a wave or you know, this being 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and maybe this is why we're seeing different things or experiencing different things, or this is the only way I could basically work out everything being now, everything happening now, no past, no future. But there was that one problem I couldn't work out with. If somebody's dead in my reality, because I know they're not really dead, all is now, so there's no past, no future, then why do they physically appear dead in my reality? And again, when you review Schrodinger's cat experiment, when you review quantum physics, when you review quantum superposition, it answers every question about time, which I'm talking about, and it answers the question that I had, or the problem I had with how is something appearing dead in my reality here and now, meaning I'm mourning the loss of someone I've loved, yet somewhere else they're fully alive. They're still living, and for all I know, they're mourning me. For all I know, I died in their reality. And I just want to note that everything I say in this video is all just stimulation of the brain. It's all just to explore the mind and play with ideas. This is not fact. It's not proven. This is not meant to change your idea. This is not meant to try and be right. I'm just sharing thoughts and trying to explore the possibilities. If it resonates with you, then you'll probably obviously keep the video on. If not, you'll exit the video. But there's something called quantum superposition when reviewing quantum physics, and what they found is that basically an electron or a particle or a person, if you will, can be found in more than one place at a time, and it's called quantum superposition. So I could be here in one person's perception, one person's observation, one person's view, and I could be gone in someone else's. And I said in my last video that this video may be a little maddening for some people. It can be scary when exploring the infinite realm of quantum physics. It can become scary for some, it can become overwhelming for some, but the possibilities basically are infinite, and that's what you are acknowledging. Not only that all is now, all is happening now, but there's no such thing as time. Time is just a system man has created, and we have to have some type of system to separate, distinguish, and sort all phenomenon, people, and things that are happening. Which is why we have time to separate things, and then we have history to put this into a record of us as a whole species, a whole consciousness. So when we want to figure out our origin, or go to our beginning, if you will, we review the record of history. But there's one thing that's not in the history books, that's not being put into history, and it's that as long as mankind is looking for its origin or beginning, we are failing, because we're only identifying with the finite side. There's a whole other side of the coin that's we're calling the non-physical or empty space. And there's life, there's consciousness, there's life there as well. I want to start talking about black holes. Just first off, I talked the other day about the double slit experiment. I talked about binary code and how binary code is basically a form of duality. We're inside of a simulation, I feel like, with a three-dimensional programming system, if you will. We can only take in and send out information in binary, in a three-dimensional way of understanding. In order to move around this or edit this, we have to review our human senses and the external universe. We have to, as I said in my video yesterday, when you change something to the external, it must be changed or edited into the internal. So either we edit the man or we edit the universe, but either way, the two are one. And if we can, I don't mean to repeat myself from yesterday, but if we can just review our 6 human senses and find a way for us to create a 7th or 8th human sense even, I mean, obviously that would allow us to take in much more energy, which energy is just information, which would allow us to take in much more information, allowing the human being to become more consciously aware of his surroundings. And this is how I feel like we will soon be able to actually see, live, and experience in a 4th dimension. As I stated, right now we're only in a 3-dimensional realm, so we're only able to obviously take in 3-dimensional information, or a 3-dimensional picture. But if we had a 7th sense or 8th sense, there's energy and parts of that color spectrum which we are not taking in, not utilizing. So if we could come up with a 7th sense, we could obviously access more of that color spectrum, which we're calling empty space, or ultraviolet light, or the opposite, UV light, which we obviously can't see to the naked eye. But I want to talk about the shape of the Earth. I talked about it yesterday as far as the double slit experiment, as far as binary code, as if it's flat or round, you're both correct. Because you are the observer which chooses which ideology or which belief becomes the reality which you are perceiving. Meaning, everything is just a wave of probability until visually given a place, a position in space, a measurement, and a definite belief or idea behind it. So, whether it's flat or round, you're correct. Whether we're inside the ball or outside the ball, you're correct. I'm no longer going to spend my time arguing and debating with people on if it's flat, if it's round, if we're inside the ball, outside the ball, because I cannot do that. I see that we are all right through this study. So what I can do is only further go into my belief of the universe and our Earth, which is still a concave universe. We're still enclosed in a system, a computer system, if you will. So I believe the Earth is concave and we are inside of it, but I'm looking at it more as a computer system, as a super intelligence computer system. No different than a wireless network that we're all plugged into. Playing a video game, all operating on one single network, which we can think of as consciousness. So we're all operating on one network, yet playing and interacting with each other, sharing information, which, again, what is information? We're sharing our human senses, which is us exchanging information of experiences, beliefs, probabilities, perceptions, etc. So we're playing the game with ourselves, with each other. And this is what basically I feel like is the greatest secret. This is what the all-seeing eye represents, is singularity. That's what infinity represents, is nothing is separate. Nothing can be separate. So what that means is that we are a single consciousness. Behind this veil, behind this mask, behind this vessel, we're all the same consciousness governing all these bodies, governing the trees, governing the external and the internal. We are all this consciousness. Now, I'm going to start talking about black holes in the universe here. Because again, if it's concave, you're correct. If you think we're outside the ball of the globe model that's been taught to us, you're still correct. But I can only go what resonates with me. And to me, this is what resonates. We are inside of something. It is a perfectly designed creation. And it must, in my opinion, it must match the microcosmic being or man. So with the globe model, I disagree with this. Yet again, I know it's correct. And this is the very maddening part of quantum physics. But again, I disagree with it, and I don't see it as so, I should say, because for it to be a globe, we would have to change every feature and property that going into the creation of man itself. Manly P. Hall even said that the ancients didn't think of the earth as some rock floating in space. They never thought of it that way. Instead, what they thought of is that it had specific and exact patterns and correlations with the man himself. And that you wouldn't have to change a thing, a principle, or even a feature in either one, because the two are one and the same, operating off the same patterns and network. So, something that Neil deGrasse Tyson said the other day kind of made me raise my brow a little bit. And he says, he acknowledges how the earth was, began as a tiny dot, or a bubble, if you will. And basically it was smaller than an electron. It was just a dot. And this is, again, what I've been telling people. This is from a Rosicrucian book in the Freemasons book, yeah? And it talks about how everything begins from a singular dot. Everything begins from a point. And when I speak on the dot, I don't mean the dot is the earth. The dot is our entire universe. Our entire universe in one picture, if you will. Through this dot, you can have any position in space, any form, any shape, any geometric shape, anything you want created can be created out of a singular point. So therefore, this singular point is God. And it talks about this in this article, how everything began with the Word, and the Word was the point. Because with that point, you have expansion. When man inks a paper, and we put our ink on that paper, we begin with the very point of this pen. So, even into the micro, creation is still beginning from the very point. All begins from the point, and all ends from the point. From the moment you begin writing, it began from the point. From the moment you end writing, it ends with the point. And that's why we begin and end in the very same place, because we are the singular point. We are the singular consciousness. And I will say this again. The black sun logo here, because I get a bunch of crap for it, and I know people will say, what do you expect? I expect it, so I'm not worried about it. But the black sun, the reason I have it up on my wall is to represent this idea or this principle of cosmology, to represent this idea of the universe in a single dot, in a single point, which is what you see there. You see the single point right here with the circle around it, no different than the human eye. The human eye has the central core and then the little circle around it, and then you've got your outer circle giving you your pupil. And that again is from micro to macro. But basically what this talks about is how everything, the creating universe, appears from the one and disappears into the one, which is the void. And this is something Walter Russell acknowledges and talks about. Walter Russell not only acknowledges how the universe and everything is just one mind, we are all one mind, but Walter Russell also goes on to acknowledge the fact that this universe cannot just burn out and die. And this is the greatest problem and misconception with nuclear fusion in the sun. We have, according to scientists today, our universe is expanding at a crazy rapid rate. Just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as stars do, until they can no longer hold, or whatever they would word it, and then they explode. They explode, and then again, they create another universe or something. Microdust, whatever. But basically, the problem with nuclear fusion in the sun is there's a few problems, actually. The best person, if you want to go into this, is Eric Dollard. Eric Dollard is basically Nikola Tesla of our generation today. But he acknowledges that there is nothing burning in the sun because the sun does not have to burn anything at all. This is an electric universe, and he acknowledges this. And I've said this before. What we're saying by saying that this is an electric universe is that this is electronic. We are inside of an electronic universe. Now, what does an electronic universe hint at? To me, it hints at we are inside of an electronic video game, an electronic screen. So I look at my horizon and everything that I'm seeing as one giant projector screen, and I view my consciousness as that projector. No different than a movie theater. You have your projecting screen and you have your projector. I look at the external as my projector. Obviously, it's not all black because I'm projecting my picture onto it. It isn't until I close my eyes that this lights out. But this is my projector, and my consciousness projects my picture, my experience, onto this screen. And my belief is that there is only one, as I've said in a few videos, there's only one central light, just as you see in this plasma ball here. There's only one central light, which is actually giving the sun and moon light. I know that the sun and moon have, this is something people have given me some crap about, but it's okay, because again, I don't have all the answers, but it makes sense. There's only one central light at the center of our universe, and although the sun and moon are one lesser and one greater light, they're still shining the same singular light. And now I've said before, and again, this is just an idea, but for all we know, because I view the sun and moon as nothing but a lens, like a contact lens. It's only got one side to it. It's not a whole circle. It's only got one side to it. So it's a bowl shape, if you will. And this is why we only see one side of the moon. We've been looking at one side of the moon since human existence. Because there is only one side to the moon, there is nothing inside the moon or the sun. They are hollow lenses, just like a contact lens with a bowl shape and up shape. Now, one of my ideas was, again, this is just an idea, but for all we know, there could be a filtered lens on the moon preventing that light from shining through as bright as the sun does. And again, that's just a theory. For all we know, there could be different lenses on the sun and moon, which allows the sun to be this much brighter and the moon to be just a soft light. But either way, it balances out with the laws of this reality, of this simulation, because where you have a yin, you have the yang. Where you have light, you have dark. Where you have on, you have off, life, death. It's the same principle. So again, I don't really focus on how one light is greater and one is lesser. I realize that it's the code to the creation. It's the yin and the yang. One greater, one lesser, as above, so below, yada, yada, yada. So that's why I believe that is correct. And what I think is if you notice, if you've ever seen, if you haven't, you should YouTube this because it's incredible. But look at the moment an egg is fertilized inside the woman's womb. And what they found is there's flashes of light that are produced the minute consciousness is sent into that egg and it's fertilized. Now, what my opinion is that this is the transferring from source, because again, the greatest question I had as a child was, how did we just magically turn on one day? There had to be a place, and I was saying this since I was like 8 years old, I kid you not. There has to be a place where consciousness turns on from. I cannot just be dead and nothing and then just be born into something. I had to be on and transform into something else. I can't just be nothing and turn into something. You always have been, and this is my point. We always are. So my question was, where is the consciousness coming from? Where's the transfer coming from? Because I always felt the woman was the stargate or the portal from this dimension to another. But where's this transfer coming from? Where's the signal coming from of consciousness? And that's where I found this idea of our universe, of a concave earth, of an enclosed universe with space being not outside, but inside. Just like the human eyeball. The black part is on the inside of your eyeball. So if you applied the code to creation, as above, so below, from micro to macro, what that principle would give you is a formula, and when you apply that formula, you would see that space can only logically be so, or be inside, when you're matching it to the man. And again, I'm not saying this is fact. I'm going off of what makes sense, what's logically being shown to me, and what's being repeated as a pattern, because patterns are speaking to us, and that's what we don't realize is the universe cannot speak directly to us in a vocal way. So it has to send information to us in ways which it can communicate with us, and it communicates with us through these patterns in nature. The Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. We see it in the universe and we see it reflected into man. It's when we follow those patterns and listen to them and apply them to the above and the below that we get our answer. And this is where I felt like we're inside of an enclosed computer system or simulation with space being the source inside right there. And what the ancients and what the Nazis believed space was, which is this little ball right here on the inside of this sun here, they believed that was a giant ball of prima materia, which Tesla thought was ether. And this is where I think Einstein most failed, is because he was trying to come up with a grand unified theory to bring every field together under one force, under one thing, and he couldn't do it. He acknowledged that gravity was expanding yet also converging in, but he had it backwards, and he never acknowledged the ether. He denied the ether, and he invented nothing behind gravity. So his concepts of general relativity and gravity were astounding at the time, but years later we can review this and see he invented nothing behind it. And I'm not a hater of Einstein, I'm simply stating a fact. This is something that can be researched, looked up, it's a fact. Einstein did not invent anything behind his theories of relativity and gravity. I've read he played some small parts in helping with make the atomic bomb and all this, but again, that was not from his theories of relativity and gravity. He invented nothing behind them because they weren't workable concepts. They weren't valid. It's Tesla, Nikola Tesla, the man who acknowledged the ether, by saying, everything's energy, frequency, vibration, electricity's around in unlimited quantities. Tesla acknowledged the ether and basically said what we ignorantly call gravity should be thought of as universal compression. And he thought we were being pressed into the earth. We're not being pushed down onto the earth. We're being pressed into the earth. And the funniest part is they've made a ride at our fair, at our state's fair. I'm sure every state fair has one. But this ride is called the Gravitron. And the best part about the Gravitron is it works the exact opposite way as Einstein's theory. If you spin something fast enough, it sticks to the inside walls. It will not stick to the outer surface. So my point behind everything I just said just now is there is a code to creation, as I said, and when you apply this formula, this is what you get. It's irrefutable and indistinguishable not to run into this, I feel personally, when you apply these formulas, when you apply these codes. You see, there's pi. There's the Hindu symbol. This is where they say the whole universe began from one sound and everything is connected to this one. There's the all-seeing eye. One. You notice they all have a singular point, right? The woman's womb itself, the stargate, the portal from this dimension to another. The woman's womb itself. Creation begins from the belly button, from the point. So how do you match this idea of creation into the earth? How do you feature this idea of creation and expansion into our earth? And it's quite obvious when we're outside of a ball, you don't have this idea. Because again, at the center of our earth, when we're outside the ball, is a melting rock of lava. But when you go back into the books of antiquity, they tell you time and time and time and time and time again, the earth unfolded from a void in the center. Now, if our universe is black and infinite forever, where is the center? How would the earth unfold from a void in the center? It makes no sense when you use that quote, and you go by antiquity. But when you go by this formula, yet again, not only does it match the man, it matches the being, so you don't have to change not one thing to creation here, but it also relates to the creation of what we see, how babies are born. That umbilical cord which allows you to travel out. We're all connected to some umbilical cord from the earth, only invisible, not visibly seen, but we're all connected. And again, there's the Vitruvian man, which shows man and woman beginning from a point and fitting perfectly inside of a circle. Because I personally feel we're inside of a circle, which is that. We're inside of a simulation. Now, I feel this was a huge win for the concave Earth study and community. But this is something most people aren't acknowledging, and I don't know why. I do not know why, but to me this was huge. This is a huge discovery. It's not even a discovery, but it's a huge article being put out. In today's society, this is huge. Okay? Harvard scientists say radiation from black holes could create life. This is huge to this model, to this idea, and to this understanding. Because what they were giving us before is black holes destroyed universes, sucked everything in. They thought of every single negative and ways of destruction behind black holes. Never did they think of the positives, nor how it could also create or expand and not only converge and suck in. But to me, this was huge because this is the whole idea of this model. We unfolded from a void in the center, and it's converging and diverging at the same time on itself. That's a torus field. It's converging in, which would be your death principle, death, to diverge back out, create life, birth. That's your yin and yang, your life force. It's no different than your pair of lungs. You breathe in, you breathe out. That's no different than the torus field. We are a torus field in itself. Everything is a field of energy in itself. And that's why this principle is inside of everything. Convergence, divergence. So it says, in the hunt for alien life, scientists often focus on the Goldilocks zone, the region around a star where the temperature would be just right for liquid water to exist on an orbiting planet's surface. But now a team of Harvard University is suggesting there's another kind of Goldilocks zone we should consider in our hunt for alien life. Instead of having a star at its center, it has a supermassive black hole. Supermassive black holes are surrounded by swirling disks of gas and dust called active galactic nuclei. These disks emit incredible amounts of radiation and light, and many researchers assume this radiation would destroy the atmospheres of any nearby planets, creating a dead zone around the black hole. But now the researchers behind this new Harvard study, which was published in the Astrophysical Journal, are challenging that assumption. People have mostly been talking about the detrimental effects of black holes. Researcher Manasavi Lingam told Live Science, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Manasavi. We wanted to re-examine how detrimental the radiation is and ask ourselves if there were any positives. To do that, the researchers created computer models of active galactic nuclei. Using them, they were able to identify galactic Goldilocks zones surrounding black holes. Hello, that's humongous. There should be a bomb going off in your brain right now. Come on. If positioned within this region, they write in their study, a planet's atmosphere would remain intact while the AGN's radiation could break its molecules into life-supporting compounds. Do you get it yet? The light from the AGN, meanwhile, could facilitate photosynthesis. Wow. The team also revisited the assumed negative effects of AGN radiation on a nearby planet and concluded that they've been greatly exaggerated. Wow. This is huge. Why are people not researching this? While previous studies suggested that the damaging effects of a black hole the size of a Milky Way's Sagittarius A would strip away the atmosphere of any Earth-like planet within 3,200 light-years, they think the damage would end at a distance of just 100 light-years. Looking at what we know about Earth, it does suggest that maybe the positive effects seem to be extended over a larger region than the negative effects. That was definitely surprising. That guy, I don't know how to say his name, Manasavi, said, end quote. Yeah, so this is a link that's on New York Times, Harvard's website. It's on the Future website, or a Futurist website. This is on a few different websites, so I mean you can look this up in a few different places, but it's valid, it's confirmed, and it's from this year. And I'm surprised this should be on every single television in the world, but yet again, I've said why they cannot expose this, because once you start getting this understanding of a concave Earth, you don't stop there. You don't just stop there and say you have your answer. You keep digging deeper, and what this will lead you into is quantum physics and the multiverse. And what that I feel will lead you into, well, not only that, but the electric universe should also lead you into simulation theory. That's what I say. This doesn't just stop at concave Earth. Once you realize the Earth is concave and you are inside an electric universe, that electric study should start leading you into simulation theory, because it's inevitable. Once you start getting to the bottom of electronics and an electric universe, you realize, well, electric. What does a TV go off of? What does a video game go off of? Electricity, right? Yeah. So what if we were just all a bunch of players on one network we call consciousness? And the same way that we're interacting in video games with each other, with other users, we're doing the very same here, except on a much more grand scale. We're calling this life. It's not just a game you plug into and then turn off when you get bored. This is the game itself. This is called life. This is what we've come to know as called reality. But basically, the reason they don't have this, back to what I was saying, the reason they don't have this on televisions and everything is because they know one who persists in this study will not only be led into simulation theory, but will be led into basically what I feel quantum physics, the multiverse. I feel like it's inevitable. When you continue this search, it's like a domino, which leads you into the simulation theory and leads you into quantum superposition and quantum computers and quantum physics. And it's weird because I never once did I ever associate any of my psychedelic trips with quantum physics. Never did I do that. What I was trying to do was relate my psychedelic experiences with the spiritual realm, the spiritual aspects, with what we're calling God, what we're calling, the spiritual side of things. But never did I once try and connect and compare my experience through psychedelics to quantum physics. Because I had the greatest laugh with myself last night, realizing that everything I've been saying about my psychedelic trip matches and 100% backs quantum physics. Everything I've been saying this whole time about how when I exit the body, I become everything. And it's the same with quantum physics, with the double slit experiment, with Schrodinger's cat. Phenomenon isn't chosen or collapsed into a single experience until it is perceived to be experienced, to be able to determine the position in space one has. So, Schrodinger's cat, he had it was a thought experiment that if you put a cat in a box, there was two different ways that I've heard of it. One with a bomb and one with like a gas that would kill this cat. If something happened, the bomb would go off, or if something, happened, I don't remember exactly what it was, but if something happened, the gas would go off. One or the two. The bomb would go off or the gas would go off. And you close this box and put the cat in there. Now, you wouldn't know if the cat was alive or dead until you opened that, or obviously came back and opened the box to see for yourself if the cat was alive or dead. And what this thought experiment is supposed to show you is what the double slit experiment and what quantum physics shows you. That everything is in superposition until it is viewed and perceived, which gives it a position in space. What superposition means is that it has no direct or given position in space, which means it is in multiple places at one time at that very moment without being perceived and viewed. So, what that means basically with the Schrodinger's cat, and again, people don't like getting into this because it gets maddening and you start exploring the infinite possibilities, and some people cannot handle that. They can't. It's overwhelming for some. Whereas for others, it's exciting. It's a thrill. But what they'd find is that the cat would be alive and dead at the same time. And this is the strange part. This is where quantum physics gets very strange. It gets very frightening for some people. How can something be alive and dead simultaneously? And that's what superposition is. Superposition means you are in more than one place at one time. So on the contrary, if I'm alive here, I'm dead in another. If I'm dead in another, I'm alive here. Now, I'm going to start getting a little deeper into quantum physics, so if you don't like this, if it's too much for you, I'll ask that you please exit the video now, because I'm going to start diving a little deeper into this rabbit hole, into this infinite hole that we're talking about here. Because there's a few possibilities with this quantum physics. There's a few possibilities. One, it's that, for instance, there can only be one main character. There can only be one actual character, one viewer. So if I'm the viewer and you're a part of my imagination or you're my illusion, that means it's just me. The internal and external are me. I am creating what I see, I'm creating the effects of what I see, and it's just me. The people I see are me, the outcomes are me, and everything I choose is me. And this is where some people don't like quantum physics, because then it suggests that there is no free will, that things are predetermined. And it is possible that they could be to an extent. Meaning, some of us have played the Black Mirror. I forget what it's called. Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, or it's a game where you have two choices on the game. And you can pick choice A or choice B, and you control what the person does, basically. I feel in this dimension that we are in, we basically have a choice of duality, of binary code, 0 or a 1. Everything in this universe goes off of binary code, a 0 or a 1. It's how we take in all our information, too, through the senses, 0 or 1. So I feel like within a sense, things are slightly predetermined. Yes, I can choose to go to the store. Yes, I can choose to drive my car, but will I take this road or that road? Well, again, in this reality, I will collapse the multiverse into a single verse through my observation and choice. I will choose this road or that road, which will now collapse that superposition, which was me in both positions. It will collapse the position into a singular one, which will be the one I'm living and experiencing. So some people don't like getting into this because they say, well, it's irrelevant. What's the difference does it make? You know, if I go this way, I'll never know what will happen if I went that way. Sure, that's true. But again, for some people, this is exciting. The quantum realm is exciting. It's what I feel is the answer. It backs my claim of time not existing. There is no such thing as time. And I've been saying this the whole time. We don't die and we've never been born. We would not know the difference. And now that I'm reviewing multiverses and superposition more in depth, it's everything I've been saying this whole time without me using these terms, without me using these words. I've been saying this the entire time. You could go back to my very first video I've ever done where I say all is now, all is one. We are singular. Which means we're all happening at one time. And this is why I love this book right here from Stephanie McDonald. From this corner of the fractal. This corner of the fractal, yeah. Pieces to piece. But it's true. We are infinite pieces, which means endless. Endless little pieces scattered, just like a kaleidoscope, to create that picture for experience. So what this basically... and here's another thing I want to talk to people about. This is where, again, it gets a little maddening, right? Have you ever had a near-death experience? Because I have. If you've ever had a near-death experience, this is, again, where quantum physics will become maddening to you. When reviewing quantum physics and the binary code of duality, the double slit experiment, it's a fact that if you've had a near-death experience, you died. You 100% died. You died in another verse. In a multiverse, you died. Only you lived to tell the tale here and now. And again, I'm not saying this is my belief or this is what is, but I'm exploring possibilities and ideas here of what I think is possible, what I think is definitely something to be reviewed. So what one theory could be is that you're a real person. It's not that you're an illusion. You're a real person. However, this is just a theory. I'm the only main character in this movie, in this reality. So although I'm talking to you, I could be talking to myself, which is just an illusion of myself. I'm a physical person in another multiverse, I'm saying, where I'm the main character, if people get what I'm saying. There's a multiverse where I'm the main character, but in this multiverse, you're the main character, and everyone else outside of you doesn't truly exist. They are a product of your mind. Again, this is just a theory. But this is where quantum physics becomes maddening to some people. You realize we're all schizophrenic in a way. We're all talking to ourselves. We're all singular. We're all one. And when you review religions, again, quantum physics will back what religions are telling you. Religions have been telling you since the beginning of recorded record that all is one. Everything is one. Singular. This means time is singular, and this means that places and people are singular. Everything is now, everything is one. So we are only interacting with ourselves. I could be interacting with myself through another person and through another multiverse. The possibilities are endless, literally, when studying quantum physics. And this is why some people just prefer to leave it alone. They don't want to get into it. They don't even want to explore it because it's endless. There is no definite answer. It's still being reviewed to this day. So as I said with the double slit experiment, those interference patterns, those waves produced by those electrons, or the marbles, whatever you call them, all those waves are probabilities, possibilities of what could happen. So again, in my near-death experience, I'll use this as an example. The phenomenon that took place were just probabilities, and by me observing it, I chose my position in space. I'm not saying I chose whether I died or lived, but by viewing ourselves, we're not only, how do I say this, perceiving our position in space, so we now have a specific position in space, because when you exit the body, you have no position in space. You're everything at one time, and that's why I said this backs what I said about psychedelics. Some people who take psychedelics have said, I wasn't just the body, I was everything happening at one time. And it's because you have now entered that quantum realm where there is no concept of time. That's nirvana. Everything is happening at one time. Everything is now. There is no separation from yourself. Or from the void, I should say. From infinity. So basically, in my near-death experience, there was a probability that I died, right? And like I said, I know I died. I know 100% I died in a multiverse. I died. I was shot in my head. I was killed. I died. My family mourned me, and they're mourning my loss, my death, in a multiverse right now. Right now, as I speak, this is happening. Just as you see me here now, alive. This is why time does not exist. Just like Schrodinger's cat. 50% of the time it's alive, while 50% of the time it's dead. It's no different than myself. It's no different than you. And again, just going by quantum physics, going by the double slit experiment. Not saying this is what is, but according to what's on record, what I reviewed, this is what I've come to. So basically, we're inside of what I feel is an electronic simulation which has, just like the Black Mirror Bandersnatch, it has maybe 2 to 3 options that we can choose, which again is the illusion of free will, but they always will collapse into one singular choice, which chooses your entire reality. Now, some people may say, well, how can I only have 2 or 3 choices? I could go to the beach, I could go to the dollar store, I could go to Publix, I could go here, I could go here, I could go here, and you just name more than 3 choices, but hear me out. The program knows what you're going to do before you do it, and it knows you're obviously not going to go here, 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 and here. So there's only 2 or 3 probabilities that you could go to, or could choose from, or could do. So I feel like we're being given maybe 2 or 3 options to choose from, and we're picking them, and it's shaping our realities, if this makes sense in a way. That some things are predetermined. Some things we can alter, some things we can change, but some things are also supposed to happen. And this is why quantum computers can predict these things. This is why quantum computers are now becoming mind-blowingly accurate with their predictions and simulating things. We're now using quantum computers to simulate outcomes which would take us lifetimes to figure out. And this is the magnificence behind quantum computers. A regular computer that we would have in our room, right, just a standard computer, would have to run a simulation one at a time, each outcome. So if there was 10,002 possible outcomes, my computer would have to single-handedly run each 10,000 outcomes one by one by one by one by one, where a quantum computer can run 10,000 to 10 million possibilities and give you an answer or an outcome within possibly hours. And this is basically what the movie Source Code was about. If you've seen the movie Source Code, I believe that Source Code is basically what CERN and these other establishments and our governments are doing. Hear me out on this for a second. We've heard about psychological warfare. We've heard about chemical warfare. Nuclear warfare. What about multiverse warfare? And I think that's the first time I've ever heard that. I don't even know if that makes sense, or if that's a word, or if that goes together. But what about a multiverse war or warfare? Maybe this is why things keep popping up differently and things are constantly changing in our memories. We call it the Mandela effect. We say that something happened this way, something was spelled this way, something was said this way, and it turns out later that that never happened. It never happened at all that way. Not at all. That wasn't said that way. What you remember being seen or shown wasn't that way. Hell, even events that you lived didn't happen. Anything. This is how I think the Mandela effect is happening, through just like the movie The Source Code. If you have not seen that and you're into this stuff, I highly recommend you watch Source Code. It's basically about our military. They successfully open up a simulation which can simulate our future. And basically what it's about is a train is going to explode and this guy's going to die on it. And the person behind this bomb inside of the train has an even bigger bomb, which he's planning to blow up an entire city. So they're looking at mass casualties of a whole city, basically. So they create a simulation where they send a person into this simulation, or they have a person plugged into it through their brain. But what's crazy is this person is no different than me and you. He is consciously aware. He can feel, he can smell, he can touch, he can see, he can everything. He can think. So he is no different. So he's freaking out being in this simulation, realizing it's in a simulation. He's asking how he got here, how he can escape. He is aware no different than me and you. And it's weird because a lot of these movies I see where they're going into multiverses, you find that these people and characters, they're still alive, they're still emotionally feeling, and they're still no different than the people that you're experiencing in what you're calling your realities. So even if we were in a grand simulation, we would not know the difference because our interactions and our information and everything would be the very same as it is now. We would not know the difference. We would be taking in information through our human senses the way we are right now. But basically what happened is he saw into the future. He obviously, found out who planted the bomb, and he stops it all from happening. And they realized in that moment, because this was like a test run, that they had successfully altered what happened in the future through a simulation. So they affected real-world phenomenon by a simulation. By a simulation mimicking our very own universe, which I would call a multiverse. They went into a multiverse, which is, again, identical as our own, and they saw into the future. And what's even stranger about this man is, in the beginning, he thinks he's a pilot from the army. He thinks he's got a different name, and he's Captain Charles whatever from the army. But when he wakes up in this train, he's not Captain Charles whatever. This woman who keeps calling him Sean, and he's like, I don't know who the hell Sean is. Why you keep calling me Sean? I'm not Sean. My name's Captain Charles whatever. I'm from the U.S. Army. I flew in this, and this. And she's telling him, Sean, are you okay? Like, you're scaring me. So he's having a moment of identity crisis. What happened was he died in combat, but they kept him artificially alive through his mind. So they plugged his mind into a simulation, which again, they successfully were able to run and practice through him. He was basically their guinea pig, their test dummy. And he proved that it worked. The simulation worked. It was able to affect real-world phenomenon through a multiverse, through a simulation, through an alternate reality, whatever you call it. And again, quantum physics doesn't have to be all scary. It's kind of fun and exciting if you think about it. You ever have any regrets? Anything you wish you did, you wish you could do? Well, in an alternate reality or multiverse, you're doing it right now. I think that's pretty cool. And this is another reason I say, though, like, we're all one, we're all doing it to ourselves. If I kill you, I kill myself. I'm killing you, I kill myself. We're all one person. If I hit you, I hit myself. If I hurt you, I hurt myself. We are the consciousness, not the form we are taking on. Not the form we see. Although this is me and that is you, we only have this concept because of a program in our minds called the theory of mind, which grants us the illusion of separation. I am my own individual, you are your own individual. We are separate, and this is not up for debate, right? It's irrefutable. We're separate. And that alone is the grand illusion of separateness, which is the point to experience. When you exit the body, you enter the void, and when you enter the void, you become a part of infinity, where time no longer exists. And this is where everything converges into a singularity, a single consciousness, a single everything. So there is no time, just as there are no others. And this is why I say, this is my personal opinion. Obviously, again, I can't prove this, but I feel like when I die, I'll just, birth into another person, into another thing, another whatever. I've said this too before, because people get so technical in what we're going to come back as. It does not matter. It's what you should note is whatever you come back as will be a temporary form of you experiencing something which cannot be felt and experienced while in the void and and outside of any form. When you have no form, there is no self-awareness. There is no identity. Some people call the ego the false identity, but if there is no ego, there is no experience. You need the false self, which is the ego, to have a separate experience from void, to have any experience at all. You kill the ego, you kill the separate illusion. You need the illusory experience to feel separate, and that is why we have a theory of mind. It is programmed inside of us. It's called the theory of mind. And this is, again, why we have a neural network as well programmed into us. We're no different than artificial intelligence. We program the theory of mind and a neural network into an artificial intelligence. So why is it programmed into my own brain? And again, that's where you can no longer have to identify as the human being. You no longer have to identify as the finite. See, the only one who will fear evolution is the one who wants to stay in the temporary form. And the one who wants to stay in the temporary form is the one who is attached and identifying solely as the finite, as the mirror image. You get too attached, you never want to let go. And this is why people have a hard time mourning people or losing people they love. Sure, it's easier said than done. I fully get that, so believe me, I'm not saying that. But we don't realize that there is divinity in the loss. You losing something is you getting lost in the experience of separation. Again, when you enter that void, I'm sorry to even say this, but when you enter the void and you go outside the body, the concept of family is gone. The concept of friends is gone. The concept of others does not exist. The concept of other places, things, people, time. It's not even a concept. It does not exist because you are the entirety. That is infinity, being one, singular. We are a single consciousness governing every form that we see. And that's why we have the grand illusion of separateness, because obviously I'm different than you. You're not me, I'm not you. We're obviously different. We look different, we sound different, we talk different, we say different things, we have different beliefs, so how could we possibly be the same? That's the beauty of individualism. You're your own individual, I'm my own. We don't need to agree. We're not supposed to agree. We're supposed to be separate. Because if all was one, we would be back into the void. There would be no others. So for you to actually want every person you come across to agree with you and just be a puppet and in sync with you, you might as well return back to the void where there is no others at all. There is no interaction, no experience. There you can always be right because there's no one to talk to. You're always right. You're all-knowing there. Hell, you have all the information, but there's no one to share it with. You're the all-knowing with no one to share it with. So getting lost in separation is beautifully divine in itself. Sure, and again, I said there's divinity in losing one you love. Now that does not mean I will not cry like a baby when I lose one I love, but I will be consciously aware I am embracing. These are tears of joy, not sadness. I am embracing the loss as a divine phenomenon. It's divine. It's the purpose of this experience, is the illusion of separation. Deep down, I know I am not separate from anyone that I love and will lose. I know this. So it's not me that's actually mourning the loss. It is my ego, my form, which wants what was in a form back. But nothing is forever. And that's why they say the hardest part is letting go. The hardest part of letting go is of the attachments and of the identity, the false identity we have of ourselves. See, it's vital to note that we do have a false identity or false self, meaning it's not who we are, but it's vital to note that without this false self, without the idea of this illusory false self, you aren't an individual. You have no identity. You are back in the void with things that cannot be experienced and expressed as you know and can hear now. Yeah, and see that's what all being one means. It's crazy how religions and people can say these things, but no one actually thinks of what all is one means. And it's because we are living in the finite side. We're only identifying with the finite side. So this is all we can know is the physical, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. We couldn't for a minute speak on the non-physical unless we've exited the body to see the non-physical. And it isn't until that we can realize we aren't just a body. Some people have asked me if there is no, because again, I'm not saying there's no God, but it depends what you're calling God and what you're creating in your mind when I say the word God. I'm not saying there's no God, but there's no God as far as what religions are giving you. Absolutely not. Not that. That understanding is absolutely wrong. There is a God, though, as far as energy, as far as your consciousness, as far as you even being able to consider if there is a God, a creator, a source. That's the divine one asking the very question of its own self. So basically, I'm just going to do an overview real quick. Let me see if I can get a real piece of paper. That's the best part. I love answering this question. Our inner voice, who is the one listening to it? Some people are under the impression that inside of our minds we have more than one voice. We have a good side and a bad side, or a higher self and a lower self. What do I always say when we review duality? The two are really one. So from my opinion, there is not more than one voice in your head. There is not a higher conscious self and a lower conscious self. That's all illusory. That's again, in your mind, you're considering the lower conscious self, that ego, which is again that illusory self, that false self which you create but need. And then you're also creating this illusory higher self, which doesn't think in the ways of the ego, which it secretly, again, knows everything is connected, nothing is separate, that time doesn't exist. So you're thinking in two different ways at the same time, through the ego and through this higher self, if you will, but they're still the same voice. And that's the constant playing of duality, the yin and yang going back and forth. That's why we're split into two sides on our brains between faith and science. It's the same thing. It's two polar opposites battling it out with each other. But again, the two are one. Science and religion, the two are one. They're exact opposite, yet they're still two of one and the same. So I'm just going to do an overview of this double slit experiment right here. This is basically what I know most of the people who watch me are already familiar with the double slit experiment, so I don't even need to explain most of this, but I'm just trying to relate it to what I'm talking about here. So they started off just basically shooting individual electrons through these two holes, right, at the points. And what they expected to find was obviously the marks, showing up behind on this wall over here, obviously where the holes were, but what they were finding is that they were creating patterns all along this whole wall here. And the only way that was possible is through a wave pattern, an interference pattern. So they were trying to see whether light would travel as a particle or a wave. They wanted to know if light was a particle or a wave, basically. And so what they found was they shot it through, individually each side. It was creating an interference pattern, meaning a wave pattern, and that was weird to them because light wasn't thought of as a wave yet, I don't think. I think it was still thought of as a particle. So this was showing them that it was a wave. So they thought, okay, let's cover one side with a block or a wall or something. So they cover one side and just shot it through, and what they found was the interference pattern not only canceled, but the wave pattern canceled, and it just went straight in like a particle. But when they removed this block again and shot them individually through, that pattern was back again. That wave pattern was back again. So what they did was they put two little sensors right here where the ball would travel under here, and they put these sensors here so it would pick up on the movement of the ball or the electron to show which side it was going through. And because they wanted to know which side it was going through, obviously, and why it was producing a pattern all across this wall when it should have just been, obviously, going through just one side. But what it was showing them is the ball was going through both holes, and it wasn't possible for that to be the case. They were only shooting one ball at a time. So basically what they found was when they put the sensors here, the interference pattern between these two canceled out, meaning they still functioned as a wave. They still created a wave pattern on this wall up here. So they still traveled as a wave, only they did not interact with each other. Now again, these waves are just probabilities. These waves that are casting out and creating a pattern on this wall here are just probable waves, probability waves. They're just things that could possibly happen. And it's not until that the viewer, or they put a camera or someone to view the phenomenon, that this changes everything around. So they kept the sensors there, and they added a camera right here, where this X is here, or where that scratch is there, okay? They added a camera there so they could physically see right at the moment of the ball going through, so they could watch which one it was going through. And they found that when the camera wasn't recording or viewing, where the point it was going through, when the camera wasn't viewing it, it was showing that it was going through both holes still, yet they were only shooting one ball. which again is mind-blowing. They're only shooting one ball, yet there's a pattern being produced through both, which shows that the ball would be traveling through both holes, only when it's not being viewed. And this is what was being proven through their sensors and through their measurements. When it's not being viewed by the camera lens, oh, sorry. Ugh. Sorry. Okay, so when it was not being viewed through the camera lens, sorry about that, we can look at this as binary code. This is your 0, this is your 1. And I haven't seen anyone on YouTube as of today. I've not seen one person, so if there is anyone out there, I apologize, but I haven't seen anyone yet make a connection between binary code, which would be duality, and the double slit experiment, because the double slit experiment is something I look at no different than binary code. It's either a 0 or it's a 1. So again, when they had no camera here, nothing to view the phenomenon, nothing to give the phenomenon position in space, or the ball position in space, what they found was the ball held superposition. And as I said previously, superposition simply means that it's in more than one spot at a time. So that's why they only shot one ball, yet it was going through both. One ball was traveling through both sides at the same time. At the same time. When not being viewed, it was traveling through both sides. Because it has no position in space. There is no viewer to give that ball position in space to decide whether it went through this side or this side. So when it's not being observed, both are correct. When it's not being observed and given a position in space, it holds superposition. It has no position in space, or a definite position in space. Therefore, it is literally in both spaces at the same time. Both are correct. It's not until we turn this camera on that it collapses this into a single event or phenomenon, if you will. It collapses into a single thing, into a single experience. So it's just like the Schrodinger's cat, On this side, the cat would be dead, but on this side, the cat would be alive. Both are true. Obviously, again, remember, when not being viewed, it holds the superposition. And so when you hold superposition, you're in more than one place at a time. You're alive and you're dead simultaneously. It just matters on what's viewing it. And this can prove everyone's seeing something different. Everyone's taking in something different. Everyone's pretty much right. No one's wrong. This 0 and 1, again, I consider this duality. So you can think of the duality as polar opposites. So again, I like to connect this to everything. You can think of your 0 as the religion. Your brain has two sides. This is your faith side, your hope and faith side of the brain. And this is your fact and logic side of science. One side is science, the other side is religion. Two polar opposites, but one is a 0 and one is a 1. And that's binary code. Two polar opposites, which is duality. This side is male, this side is female, this side is positive, this side is negative, this side is sun, this side is moon. This is your left hemisphere, this is your right hemisphere. Now, you look at this and then you wonder, why does man's body have a perfect median with two sides to it? Why does our Earth have a perfect median or equator with two hemispheres or two sides to it? And then again, you review this, the double slit, binary code, duality. We're inside of a programmed reality here. We're inside of a three-dimensional simulation. That's what I feel like all this is showing you. This should lead you into a simulation theory, into studying simulation theory. And as I've said, those who aren't looking into simulation theory as of today, I feel will be doing so the more we continue to progress and advance our virtual reality experience. I briefly covered this last video, and as I stated, with the very first video game ever created, some people say it was Pong or whatever, it was before my time, so I wouldn't know, but basically, you began with the most basic video game, only stimulating your one human sense of sight. As games progress, that sense of sight begins to get stimulated deeper and deeper and deeper to the point to where the graphics are so insane, they look almost like our reality. But what if we could start uploading our human senses other than just sight into these games? And it's already happening. In this virtual reality headset, I forget the company, but I just saw the link yesterday. Not only can you see in the virtual reality with these headphones on, or this headset, but you can smell. You have a sense of smell inside this reality, inside of this virtual reality. So that's now two human senses being stimulated through a video game. So soon we're going to have our sense of taste featured into this video game. Soon we're going to have our sense of touch featured into this video game. And this is where experiences are soon going to be virtual. I've talked with people about this before, and again, I don't mean to get nasty, but soon pornography will be as simple as you uploading your consciousness into a virtual room and having virtual sex, because your virtual feelings are still just as real as the one in the real life here and now. It would feel no different. And again, I don't mean to be vulgar or nasty, but I'm trying to show the relation. It's happening. We're moving into this to where all of our human senses will soon be stimulated by a video game, by a virtual world, a virtual reality. And if it's indistinguishable from our own here and now, then it's irrefutable in a way to say that we are not already in a simulation. We are not already in a virtual reality. We can't think of it as so because, again, we have a birth. We've been birthed out. We have a beginning, an origin. So that identifies us as the finite, as the body, and as just the finite side. And again, you can think of that as another part of duality in a time continuum, yeah? There's 0 and there's 1. Think of this as your time continuum. Birthing, present, death. Past, present, future. Neanderthal, human being, superintelligence. We're in 3 states. Everything is in 3 states. Everything is in 3 states. We obviously have duality, which is 2, but that duality is only duality or dual, which is polar opposites. They can only be polar opposites through a median or a center point. So that gives you 3 points now, a trinity. And this is why I think religions and other holy books constantly reference the trinity and the number 3, because that's what it represents, is our 3-dimensional realm here, and that everything is in states of 3. Again, 2 polar opposites coming from one central point. So we have 2 sexes, male, female, and then we have the central point, which is consciousness. Both of them put together. We've got the positive side, we've got the negative side, we have the neutral side, which was the median point. So what if, and that's why I've talked about 4D, what if we could create a 4-dimensional external reality or universe by simply coming up with a 4th state, by simply coming up with a 7th human sense? It's possible, because we are God in the making. We are manifesting our Creator through us. Through any technology, any innovative inventions and technologies and anything that we create, is us manifesting our Creator. We're put here to create, to evolve, to transform, to perfect, not to stay the same. And that's why I say it's the one who identifies as just this mirror image that is terrified of evolution and change. The one in the mirror wants to stay this way forever, wants to just be. However, that void uses separation as creation, as experience, to experience what cannot be experienced inside void. So the last thing I'm going to end the video with is this. This is basically what I think CERN and the governments are doing. They are messing with our timeline. They are currently messing with our timeline and our time continuum, or our reality, our universe, if you will. If you watch the movie Source Code, yet again, I encourage everyone who has watched this video thus far to go watch Source Code. It's a movie about everything I've just talked about, like quantum physics and simulation theory. But I basically feel like our governments and CERN has successfully done what is shown in that movie Source Code. They're messing with our current and present day today and timeline today through alternate realities, through simulated universes or multiverses, if you will, which again are no different than our own. And I've always said that our governments are hundreds of years of technology in front of us. We get released their what they become bored with. They were probably, and this is just a joke, obviously, I'm just playing around here, but for all we know, the governments could have been playing with an Xbox One, the newest Xbox we have today. They could have been playing with this in the 1920s, 1930s. They got bored with it, and they perfected their shit so much that now they don't need it. They give it to us, and they sell it to us. For all we know, they're already traveling interdimensionally. They're already in other galaxies, other places, other time zones, other realities and multiverses. And not just that, but for all we know, they are affecting and changing our own reality here through other simulated multiverses. And that would perfectly explain the Mandela effect of certain phenomenon being recorded one way and then being changed and altered a completely different way later on. It's no different than conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are the exact same thing. And there are some people who won't like to hear what I'm about to say about conspiracies because some people say, no, I know the facts. I've seen the stuff. But it's no different than this 0 and this 1. Superposition, multiverses, both phenomenon have happened. Both phenomenon are correct. Why? Because the ball went through each side. If you say 9/11 was caused by terrorists, why, you're correct. If you say 9/11 was the people's government betraying their own people, you're also correct. You're a 0 or a 1, you're correct. But this could be what's changing conspiracies, changing things, changing certain things. For instance, I didn't hear about this no plane theory until about 2 years, 3 years after 9/11. There were people talking about explosives and thermite being, planted on the towers and this, but I didn't hear about this no plane theory or conspiracy until several years after the conspiracy, after the event happened of 9/11. And I was reading books on it, and that's what got me started into all this is 9/11. I was a kid. So I was reading books and watching videos on this all day. It wasn't until years later I saw this no plane theory out of nowhere, and it made me think, well, maybe someone is seeing this, like no one, maybe somebody legit saw no planes. If that's what they saw, they're either a 1 or a 0. They're correct. And they'll sit there and argue and debate and call someone an idiot or stupid for believing their government, again, because they think it was terrorists and it wasn't their government. Both are correct. Both phenomenon happened. But it wasn't until they were viewed, given position in space, and given a belief, a thought, a construct, that this unfolded. This possibility, this wave of possibilities just collapsed into one current reality, which is what we have. So while you're experiencing one thing, a 0, I'm experiencing the other, a 1. And it gets even madder. It gets even madder by simply saying, in one multiverse, I'm a 0, I'm dead. In another multiverse, I'm a 1, I'm alive. This video is going to be on my YouTube, Red Pill Rabbit Hole. If you want to rewatch it, if you have any questions, you can comment on there or send me an inbox on my Facebook. Thank everyone for watching. Again, I'm not doing these videos to try and change anyone's minds or to be right or to challenge you or to debate you or nothing. I'm just simply sharing my experience and my record here. And if it resonates with you, that's awesome. I'm not trying to force anything on anyone. I'm not trying to frighten anyone. I'm not trying to do anything but explore the possibilities. Explore infinity. You guys have a good Tuesday. Enjoy your day. Be safe. Subscribe on YouTube, and don't forget, if you haven't, check out this article here. Harvard scientists say radiation from black holes could create life. Because once again, that alone backs this right here. You guys have a good day.